27 years ago, Doom rocked our world with fast-paced shooting gameplay the likes of which had never been seen before. The simple premise of shooting demons on Mars is all it took for over 2 decades worth of great gameplay. Doom's predecessor, Wolfenstein 3D, kind of set the framework for how FPS games would go on to play. There was no way Doom could be as revolutionary. But Doom was such a huge improvement that, for me, it might as well be where the genre started. Doom supports enhanced mouse input from Wolf 3D, making aiming feel just as good as aiming in modern games, horizontally at least. Maps could be built to be more complex and varied, and features some of the coolest level design out there to this day. Doom Guy's movement is quick, yet weighty. The arsenal is varied, perfectly balanced, and iconic. Ditto for the enemies. And all that comes together perfectly to make the game feel great. And I don't mean this in a good-for-its-time kind of way. Forget that they're old, forget that they were made with technology that's limited compared to today. Doom 1 and 2 are more fun to play than almost all other games. Period. It's me, social media influencer M1. Today I'm reviewing Doom Eternal. Since Eternal is the most recent game in such a prestigious series, I think this review of it deserves being thorough, including over-explaining some more general shooting game ideas, stuff that applies to a lot more games than Eternal. For that reason, this review is going to be pretty long. To really explain what I think, I've got to talk about the Doom series in general, as well as some other shooting games. Here's a quick list of what I'll be mentioning. No major spoilers for anything but Doom games, though. As you'd expect, I guess. Also, I've only ever played this game on Nightmare difficulty with tutorials off, so if I say something that sounds weird, maybe that's why. I'll start with the first modern Doom game. Doom 2016 represented a reboot of the series, hence the actual official name of Doom. The idea of rebooting the series is somewhat understandable. It had been almost 12 years since the previous entry, Doom 3, and that game is infamous for being such a huge departure from the style of Doom 1 and 2. Also remember, in the early 2010s, the old Doom-like style of designing a shooter was almost nowhere to be seen. Or at least that's the popular perception, but there were some exceptions. 2011 Serious Sam 3 had some minor, mostly inconsequential modern conventions, but was pretty much an old-school Serious Sam game. 2013 saw 2 old-school shooters, with the remakes of Rise of the Triad and Shadow Warrior. Rise of the Triad 2013 is pure boomer shooter. I'm sure you get that by just seeing the split. Shadow Warrior had a lot of modern design conventions, as well as a pretty original addition. It was one of the few FPSs to really focus on melee combat. A lot of things about it really do feel old school in a good way, but ultimately, it's its own thing. Nothing like the original Shadow Warrior. As far as I can tell, games of this style were few and far between, and I think that's especially true from the perspective of the average gamer, who isn't half as autistic as me. Shadow and Rise were releases that didn't have a huge cultural impact among the mainstream. What did mainstream audiences notice? Well, Duke Nukem Forever.
I'm back, baby.
Just like Doom, this was a case of a dormant old-school FPS series being brought back. DNF definitely nailed the old feeling of a Duke game thematically.
Oh yeah, it's ass-kicking time.
But mechanically, it seemed to embrace all the most stereotypical traits of what was, at the time, a modern shooter. Only 2 guns at once, simplified movement, health that regenerates over a short time, very linear level layouts, less dynamic enemy encounters, gameplay being interrupted constantly for a cutscene or something.
Hey Duke, wanna play me in air hockey?
I think that last one is justified in this case, but Duke Nukem Forever was not the triumphant return of old-school FPS that it could have been. This is probably the part where I should mention 2014's Wolfenstein: The New Order, but every time I try to play it, this happens. So, I haven't played it. Whatever the case, when modern id wanted to show the world the glory of Doom's legacy, I can understand why a reboot would seem appropriate. So, Doom 2016. Doom 2016 starts off with a bang, or I guess a crunch, of this guy's skull. The very first room shows a mix of satanic and sci-fi imagery, signaling that this Doom game is indeed a Doom game. Throughout the game, the player encounters demons. Actual demons, for realsies, and they've got huge guts. You see the Cyber Demon, the Spider Mastermind, Mancubi, Revenants. All our old friends are back. These friends, too. It really must be an old-school shooting game. Yeehaw! These enemies don't fire from behind cover, and you're not expected to either. You have no aim-down sights feature because all your weapons have perfect accuracy. Since you don't need to aim down sights, you can just move as fast as you want while firing, no problem. You also don't need to worry about reloading. Except for when you do, but that's different. By the end of the game, you'll have a full spread of weapons so you can pull a shotgun out of your arsenal anytime you need it.
A big part of good design, you gotta evaluate it in a 50,000 foot view and be able to distill it down to the core elements that make it great. And a lot of time was spent working to figure out what are the core elements of the Doom brand, not just Doom the game or 1 or 2 or 3 or 64, but the Doom brand as a whole. Figuring out what those ingredients are, so that way everything we do, make sure that it utilizes those core principles.
Doom Guy tosses the monitor aside when Hayden tries to talk with him because cutscenes are boring. Doom is all about the gameplay. You collect keys, press switches made of skulls, fire rockets, get berserk packs, and rip and tear, just like in the comic that everyone has read. A few songs from the soundtrack are explicitly metal, so Doom, right? Everyone knows all this, so here's something almost nobody talks about for some reason. Not long after the game was released, in October that year, Doom 2016 was updated with Arcade Mode. Arcade Mode elevates Doom 2016 big time. Arcade Mode gives score for special kinds of kills like headshot kills, triple shot kills, kills on stunned enemies, stuff like that. They all stack, so ideally you get multiple categories of special things per kill, like headshotting a stunned enemy. On top of this, there's a combo system whereby your score multiplier rises the more you damage and kill, and lowers the longer you go without that, or when you take damage. Add to this that you get a massively higher score for playing on Nightmare difficulty, and you have a game mode that requires mastery of the game if you want to get even a decent score. If you're a fan of high skill cap FPS games at all, Doom 2016's Arcade Mode is a must-play. Hopefully it's clear that I love Doom 2016. Arcade Mode is great, but even without it, I think Doom 2016 is at least quite good. But I don't think it's a good reboot. The whole point of a reboot, I think, is to say to the world, this is Doom, or this is Resident Evil, or Tomb Raider, or whatever. A person who's only played the original and a person who only played the reboot should be able to have a conversation with each other and have the same idea of the fundamental appeals of the games. I think the idea should be to recreate the core things that made the original game great, while benefiting from advances in technology and maybe improving a few things the original might have stumbled on. If the original id team had been reasonably able to do it, I'm sure the original Doom would have had vertical aiming, jumping, and music made with real electric guitars. I don't think this is the role Doom 2016 plays, though. I don't think it captures the original essence of Doom, not entirely. 2016's movement speed is slow. Kinesthetically, it's about as basic as it gets. The two movement techs are mantling and double jumping, both of which are super mundane to execute. The double jump feels good, and it and mantling add something by allowing players to take advantage of any verticality in the level design, but really, it's nothing deep, and it's very different from the original Doom's fast movement, even discounting SR40. Your momentum is pretty heavy in the old Dooms too. Let go of movement and you keep going for a bit, kind of simulating how people would stop sprinting gradually in real life. It makes it so that to truly master Doom, you have to know how to control yourself well, tapping the opposite direction to come to a full stop faster, and getting a sense for how long that tap should last for a given speed is important. The result is a movement system that feels weighty and takes a bit of skill to control, but allows skilled players to quickly and accurately weave between enemy attacks, or bust into a room and then pop back behind cover. It also makes platforming challenges relevant. None of the platforming challenges in Doom 2016 are engaging to me, while in old Doom, something as simple as walking across a small path can feel both daunting and rewarding. Keep in mind, all this depth is from a system where you can't even jump. This weaving through enemy attacks has a different feeling in New Doom too. Enemies are generally more mobile, more aggressive, and fire much faster moving projectiles. In Classic Doom, you'll fight enemies with a bit slower projectiles, as well as some hit-scan enemies that require a different approach entirely. At high skill levels, you'll find yourself using cover, shooting from doorways, bursting down hit scanners, baiting melee attacks, and doing little small dodges of enemy shots, almost giving some areas the feeling of a bullet hell game. Ha! Bullet hell. There are no hit scanners in Doom 2016. Projectiles fly at you much faster, and melee enemies chase you down a lot more aggressively. This, combined with your more homogeneous movement, results in a more universally applicable strategy. Keep moving. This has been reinforced by modern id themselves.
We spent a lot of time making the AI capable fighters. For example, being able to nail moving players with accurate shots. But then we decided that giving the AI accurate prediction against moving players ran counter to the goals of push-forward combat, as you've already heard. Our solution is to purposefully miss when the player is moving, right? Simple. And the AI will miss more often and with greater distance as the player moves faster. I forced this sim to miss me even at a crawl. So there's a hit, you see the screen effects. Every other throw is a miss.
Seeing the enemy accuracy system demonstrated like this is almost disappointing. Not that they did anything wrong. This is a great way of achieving the push-forward playstyle they were going for, but it highlights a huge difference between 2016 and Classic Doom. To a lot of people, I think the idea of always keep moving seems like a boomer shooter philosophy, at least on the face of it. And it might very well be compared to the decades worth of cover shooters where you hide behind a wall and wait for your health to regenerate for a whole year. But at the end of the day, there's nothing deep about holding down the W key. You're generally not expected to pay attention to enemy attacks, have much variety in your movement, time the moments you attack, or think about your positioning beyond the current moment. There are plenty of other major differences too, but anyway. Doom 2016 is great, but there's a lot of the original Doom experience that it fails to evoke, which I think is meaningful for a game called Doom. Its status as a reboot aside, many of the differences are things that I just personally don't prefer. The push-forward playstyle isn't bad game design, but I personally prefer the more varied and free-form style of play of Classic Doom. That aside, there are some things that I think could have just straight up been done better in Doom 2016. Stuff that is bad. Anyway, game director Hugo Martin apparently agrees.
We really had to analyze, like, what's going on? Like, why isn't it fun again? And a part of it is that push-forward combat and glory kills weren't going to carry us this time.
Right.
There were some shortcomings in Doom 2016, if we were being honest with ourselves.
The overall design of Doom 2016 wasn't as airtight as we'd like.
As for what those things that could have been improved are, this isn't a Doom 2016 review, so I'll move on. Push forward, as it were. Anyway, it's a good thing to see developers be critical of their own work, even when it was already a success. Maybe a Doom-like thing to do would be to make a sequel that was just more of the same with a couple new enemies and weapons. That would have been okay. But with Eternal, New id didn't just change a lot of what was established in 2016, they challenged many of the subgenre's conventions. The result is a game that lives up to its title, pushes the boundaries of shooters, and feels good as hell to play. In some ways, Doom Eternal still feels a lot like Doom 2016. I would guess they're on the same engine. I'm not gonna check. But within the first few minutes of the first level, Hell on Earth, you can feel the difference. Look at what's potentially your first weapon mod, the sticky bombs. 2016's counterpart, Explosive Shot, takes like 50 years to cool down. Eternal's sticky bombs can be fired quickly 3 times in a row, and the reload is still faster than 2016's cooldown. Maybe you get full auto first, doesn't really matter because you get your second weapon mod almost immediately. On top of that, no pistol. You start with a shotgun and it's bound to the 1 key. Good luck with your muscle memory. The message is clear. This thing is your bread and butter. This makes the feeling of fights pretty different right from the beginning. Your first bit of fighting in 2016 is much more about closing the distance with enemies and getting glory kills. Since your explosive shot cools down so slowly, you'll mostly be using your regular shot, and the damage is so pitiful that the zombie men and even the imps take several shots to kill unless you're at melee range and get a headshot. Thankfully, these are the only enemies you face in Doom 2016's first level. In Eternal, though, the first level also throws in arachnotrons and cacodemons, plus the environmental hazards of the fireball launchers and tentacles. In Eternal's case, this is good, because you're so much more capable of handling it in a way that's fun. Here's me getting through the first real combat area of Doom Eternal. No hunting down everything so my pea shooter can put it into glory kill range, just launching bombs across the room. By the end of the first level, you have the shotgun with both mods, the heavy cannon with a mod, the chainsaw, grenades, and double jump. That's a lot more at your disposal than the end of 2016's first level, and it sets the tone well. Eternal gives the player more to work with, and therefore demands more of the player to succeed. The first level also does a great job of communicating the narrative. For those of you who don't know the story of Doom Eternal, this is what you need to know. Like 100 years in the future, a portal to hell is opened, monsters invade, and a badass with guns kills them. There you go. That can actually serve as a story summary for any of the Doom games. Take a look around and you can see what's going on. This obviously used to be a big city, but now the surrounding area is almost flat. This might be the highest level of urban destruction I've seen in fiction, at least depicted this directly. The exact details of what happens in the story don't really matter, which is good because I don't know them. Doom Guy doesn't care. Big picture though, the journey taken through the game is sick. Just like Doom 1 and Doom 2, Doom Eternal goes from 2016's focused experience at a UAC facility on Mars to the full-scale demon invasion on Earth. I've always really liked the urban environments in Doom 2, so it's no surprise that thematically I really like Doom Eternal's comparable levels, Hell on Earth, Super Gore Nest, and Art Complex. But there's a good variety of locations in Eternal. You're after some super bad guys, the Hell Priests and the Con Maker, and you need stuff to find them and kill them. Doesn't matter, it's just excuses to go from destroyed cities, to a Hell factory in the Arctic, back to Hell itself, to a Brony convention, to an angelic alien world which suggests that the existence of Hell is just the tip of the iceberg. The journey culminates in Doom Guy killing his girlfriend who's 5 times bigger than him, and then facing down the icon of sin who, if the credits are anything to go by, is not voiced by John Romero. I got some water. Anyway, it's all very good, and again, the general progression as far as what weapons and options you have available to you, and the enemies thrust upon you, goes quite a bit faster than Doom 2016, and most shooters in general. By the end of the game, you have 7 main weapons, each with different mods, 2 super weapons, 2 weapons which can contextually instantly kill most enemies, 2 grenades, an explosive punch, and 4 different ways of recovering health from any enemy. All of these options can interact with each other, and all of them have their own unique resource pool. Just like a sequel generally should, Doom Eternal cranks things up in almost every regard. While the game might seem more intense thematically, mechanically a lot of the changes are just small tweaks. And that's good because in any deep game, small changes can have a really big effect. Ammo management is an easy example. The only difference from Doom 2016 is that the first charge of your chainsaw passively recovers, and your max ammo pool for your weapons is lower. You could already chainsaw enemies for ammo in 2016, but those 2 little tweaks have had a huge and polarizing effect on Doom Eternal's ammo management. An important part of 2016's push-forward combat is glory kills. Glory kills were probably the most advertised feature of 2016, and it makes sense. They go along with Doom's legacy as bloody, violent games, which is nice. The idea behind the gameplay is that glory kills encourage aggressive playstyles. The zeitgeist of the time, or at least probably a few years before the time, was regenerating health. Taking cover behind a wall or whatever, and waiting for your health to regenerate whenever you're injured. Just waiting. Very passive, very defensive, not very interesting, and very much nothing like a Doom game. In New Doom, the idea is that your best option is to just fight. When you kill enemies, they drop health. And if you glory kill them, they drop even more health. New Doom's enemies are very aggressive and pretty much don't let you take cover, so pushing forward and slaying demons is just as much a part of your defense as it is your offense. When details regarding Doom 2016 were first being shown, I remember quite a few people not liking the idea of glory kills, because, again, Doom 2016 was a series reboot, and this was one more thing that looked distinctly not Doom. It seemed that glory kills were another example of games trying to get rid of gameplay in favor of being cinematic. And there is something to that. Strictly speaking, glory kills are not gameplay. They're paired animations. If you do a string of them, you have several seconds of time where you're not really playing the game. But there's no reason to speak so strictly. If your criteria for something that's too cinematic or whatever is a paired animation playing for like 2 seconds, then you must also hate things like throwing or special attacks in fighting games or beat-em-ups. Maybe you do. Whatever. But short, non-gameplay things like door-opening animations, moments where cameras pan, or like this, glory kills, are changed by the context of the surrounding gameplay. That's the thing. My defense of glory kills is actually a refutation of another defense that I've seen of glory kills. Yeah. So, like, I've seen people defending glory kills by saying, you can just not do them. Just keep shooting when the enemies stagger and become glory killable. It'll be just like they don't exist. That's a pretty weak defense. At best, you're saying that the mechanic just fails to meet its potential. It's just a worthless addition. Doesn't get in the way, but it doesn't do anything. I think this argument is worse than that, though, because, as would be the case for even a mediocre game, 2016 and Eternal are balanced around glory killing's inclusion. The whole point of the mechanic is that it's how you regain lost health. Compared to old Doom, damage is much harder to avoid, that damage is higher, and health pickups are fewer and further between. If the game's going to be any good, that has to be the case. If you can regain health from any enemy, you've got to balance the game. There's also the fact that glory killing is a way of killing the enemy that costs no ammo, so it affects the ammo economy. If you just don't like the mechanic, that's fine. No one can reasonably tell you to just ignore it. Anyway, glory killing is not my favorite new mechanic of Doom Eternal, but it does have some cool effects. Again, the effect on aggressive playstyles. There's also some cool little things that it adds to the formula, such as the fact that glory killing gives you iframes. If you're in trouble and a staggered enemy is nearby, you could save yourself by mashing GK on it. But there is some risk-reward in that you could get owned as soon as you come out of the animation. What feels really good to me is timing the GK to deliberately use those iframes to avoid specific incoming damage. So something that started out as a crutch, that would get me killed half the time anyway, turned into something stylish. But I think the potential for glory killing wasn't realized until Eternal. Health drops from regular kills are cut way down. In 2016, if you're low on health, you get a lot from just blowing up an imp. In Eternal, even if you're about to die, you only get 20 HP at most. Knowing how to quickly bring an enemy to glory kill range is much more important, and that entails keeping your cool when you're about to die instead of panic shooting. Double tap with the heavy cannon for imps and zombies, a single ballista shot for prowlers, rocket PB rocket on Hell Knights. Ignore the quad damage, fully charged destroyer blade, super shotgun ballista PB ballista super shotgun for tyrants. Even after you know these things, it's not always easy to just do the thing you need to do to get a GK without overkilling the enemy. When you get clipped by a Mancubus shot for 80 damage, it's really nice to be able to use the nearest enemy for a GK in the 1.7 seconds before you eat another 80 damage from the next Mancubus shot. The idea of giving the player more control and more responsibility over the resources they get is taken further with my favorite new mechanic of Doom Eternal, the Flame Belch. Set fire, get armor. Armor drops gradually as the demons take damage while burning, or they drop all 20 at once if they die. In 2016 and Eternal, armor is just another layer of health. There's no complex thing going on with damage reduction. Damage just depletes the armor the same way, then moves on to your health. It was pretty much pointless in 2016. The fact that armor was a separate pickup from health did make some difference, but it was mostly just the same as having a bigger health bar. In Eternal, the Flame Belch fixes that. Armor is still technically just more health in terms of the way it eats damage, but you have to perform a separate, non-redundant action to get it. There's no rune that gives you armor along with HP when you do a glory kill in this game, so if you want armor, you have to burn stuff. Along with your chainsaw and your 2 grenades, that's another cooldown to keep track of, and that does add a little bit more depth. But what's really impressive to me about the Flame Belch is how it interacts directly with your other abilities. I'm going to analyze this kill here as an example of how it interacts with just glory kills. I Flame Belch a big group of enemies, and immediately glory kill one. As the GK animation plays, I'm invincible, and I'm getting a bunch of armor from the guys around me just soaking up the armor with no risk. Then as the GK finishes, I get the full armor amount from the guy I'm killing. And during the GK animation, my Flame Belch cooldown was already recovering, again, risk-free, because remember, any ability that's based on cooldowns benefits from time when you've got iframes going. That's just how those two abilities interact in that moment. The truth is, the Flame Belch's presence affects the entire game because it can be combined with glory kills at any time, which makes glory kills much more important. When you're new to the game, and you're taking a ton of damage, it can feel like you need to glory kill way too much to survive. But combining the flame effectively with glory kills makes the presence of fodder enemies seem almost overpowered for you. This also plays along with the value of knowing and controlling enemy positions, since, ideally, you use the Flame Belch on a bunch of enemies. Sometimes if there's a threatening demon to glory kill and you're about to die, you might just flame it, and get the health and armor now, hoping your cooldown will be over when you need it again, and you don't want to risk being so low. Or you might just kill the demon and save your flame for a group. It's another one of those little things you judge as you play. The Flaming Hook upgrade for the Super Shotgun skyrockets your potential armor collection when combined with the regular Flame Belch. It's really sick how many shards you can stack up when you're in God Gamer mode. Of course, in God Gamer mode, you won't be taking that much damage, so the Blood Punch upgrade's interaction with the Flame Belch is pure genius. These upgrades that let you refill your Blood Punch from extra armor and health when you're already full on them rewards good players with the ability to spam like the most powerful move in the game. Think about this. The Blood Punch rune that makes enemies drop HP when killed by it, and the fact that the BP has a big shockwave. Using it in conjunction with the Flame Belch means a big group of enemies is a ton of free armor and free HP, and if you're good enough, the Blood Punch gets recharged immediately. It's a really big deal how both the Flame and the Punch have a physical effect over an area compared to just affecting a single entity. Getting the full HP, stacking shards, and punching a tyrant to death is something most players will probably never do, but that's the potential for mastery that Doom Eternal's highly synergistic systems have. This take what you need system has two downsides though. The first just has to do with the chainsaw and is more of it not failing to meet its potential rather than a big issue. Reminder of how the chainsaw works. Use the chainsaw on a demon and a paired animation will play, instantly killing the enemy and giving you ammo. You could think of it as a glory kill that gives you ammo. This is your primary means of regaining ammo. Your chainsaw has 3 fuel. Little demons cost 1 fuel, big boys cost 3, biggest boys cannot be chainsawed. You passively regain up to 1 fuel over time, Or to put it differently, the first chainsaw fuel works on a cooldown. This means there's a trade-off that's made. You can chainsaw a fodder demon any time the saw is off cooldown, but if you have 1 or 2 extra fuel that you've picked up, you're sacrificing the chance to chainsaw a bigger threat until you find more fuel. The problem with this is that anytime you don't have an extra fuel saved, there's no reason whatsoever to not just chainsaw a nearby fodder demon anytime you're remotely close to being out of ammo. You just look vaguely in the direction of a demon, press the button, boom. Not much choice to be made, it's the obvious thing to do. In these moments, which happen pretty often, it's not much different from your guns just having a cooldown of their own of some sort. Not to mention, the skill requirement for actually executing a chainsaw is non-existent. Anyway, it's not a bad system. It does its job. It makes it so that players can always have all types of ammo, but still have a reason to conserve. Since you're always bound by the 20-second chainsaw cooldown, it encourages the player to be ammo efficient during that period, especially since a fodder demon to chainsaw isn't always around. Fodder demons. That leads me to the bigger issue. I alluded to this before. 5 whole members of the enemy cast are nearly irrelevant. Zombies, soldiers, imps, and even mecha zombies and gargoyles are some of the biggest scrubs I have ever seen. Come on guys, get good. It often seems like there's no real difference between an encounter consisting of 2 Hell Knights and 3 imps, and 2 Hell Knights and 10 imps. Really though, there is a difference. And that's that the 10 imps is actually easier. Remember the Flame Belch. Boom. That's a lot of armor. Out of ammo? If there's a lot of fodder around, just mash chainsaw, and you get your ammo back and several seconds of invincibility. And since only a certain number of enemies can attack at once in Doom Eternal anyway, there's a point where increasing the enemy count doesn't mean you're going to be dealing with more attacks. The beginning of this Slayer Gate is a great example. It starts with nothing but carcasses and soldiers. In theory, all the carcass shields should make the usually weak soldiers much more threatening in these large numbers. Really what happens is the soldiers are constant free armor, health, and ammo. If this encounter was just the carcasses and 1 zombie, it would be harder, not easier. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this. It just flips the traditional idea of enemy encounter design around a bit. There's nothing wrong with making an encounter harder by taking away enemies or vice versa. It's just another parameter to tweak. But it is a shame that there can't be any really hard challenges involving just the weaker enemies. This is a big thing in classic Doom. The aforementioned presence of hit scanners is a part of this. I mean, the chain gunners are infamous for a reason. But large groups of imps are frequently used to great effect too. It also bothers me that this walking pinata thing applies to so many enemies. All these guys being low threat, 1-button kills causes them to seem a little too similar to me. There's a little bit of relevant difference in how you interact with these enemies as resources. Like I said earlier, the different ways to quickly set up a glory kill. Soldiers are a little tankier than imps, but are less mobile and can therefore be more reliably flame belched as a group, or used long-term as meat hook points. Gargoyle's flight exercises the player's vertical aim a bit more than the other fodder. Feels really good to pop them out of the air during their charged attack. But at the end of the day, once you've got grenades, flame belch, blood punch, and rocket launcher, all these enemies are mostly the same meat to grind. Adding insult to injury is that lost souls are barely in the game at all. The pain elemental ones don't count. One idea for a solution is already in the game. It's our guys, the Maker drones. They take 3 chainsaw to kill, and it's pretty stupid to use the chainsaw on them because you can just headshot them. Lots of health and lots of ammo, easy peasy. I mean, it's not really easy, that's the point. They're a bit hard to hit. Really hard for gamepad users, I would imagine. And the drones do a lot of damage. Putting more of them in a fight does up the danger, while still giving the player a way to restock on ammo. Taking just one of these guys and balancing them a bit more toward threatening, relative to how helpful they are, would be nice. That doesn't need to be done by making the imp's fireball do 200 damage, by the way. Maybe like, only zombies cost 1 fuel, other fodder cost 2. Or maybe they cost 1, but they have to be glory killable first. Or maybe armor drops are based on a demon's class, so soldiers and imps would only give 5 or 10 max, and bigger demons could give more to balance things out. Soldiers being hit scanners again might be cool. Reintroducing hit scanners is a big deal, I know, and I can't be confident about it without playtesting. But with Eternal largely being designed around the assumption that the player will take damage and will be able to recover it, hit scan might just work. Anyway, those are all bad ideas, but you get the point. Just like how the drones give supplies from getting headshot, I think it would be nice if there were 1 or 2 more enemy types that gave supplies from some kind of special skill-based kill, instead of there being 6 different enemies that instantly die when you press the C key. Of course, 2016's move to a more linear level structure is related to this way of handling resources. 2016 and even more Eternal are a series of self-contained challenges reminiscent of crazy 3D action games. This is yet another reason 2016 is a bad series reboot, even if it rules as its own game. Classic Doom and just about every other FPS that came out for several years after had complex and often deep level layouts. While progression between levels is linear, the player has a lot of choices as far as the routes they take and order they do things in within most levels. Many maps have a hub-type area that players keep passing through as they grab key cards and make progress. Monsters can theoretically be ignored with no direct effect on progress. And most importantly, when comparing to New Doom, there is lots of loot. Secrets aren't metal albums, they're weapons, ammo, armor, health, and that matters. You don't get supplies from enemies. Well, okay, like shotgun guys drop shells, chain gunners drop bullets, but you get what I mean. Even those are limited. In each classic Doom level, and most FPS levels, there's a finite supply of resources. There's a certain amount of health and ammo, and there will never be any more. That means every shot you miss matters, and every little bit of damage you take matters. So you can have enemies like zombie soldiers and imps who die from Doom guys sneezing on them, and still have them be a threat, because chip damage matters. All this means that the actions you take earlier on in a level, or even the game, can have an effect on what's going to happen later on. If you go through a certain kind of supply early on, you're not necessarily going to get punished for it, but you will have to change your strategy. That can result in different areas, different levels being approached different ways throughout different playthroughs, or different players. The new Dooms aren't the first really linear FPS games, of course. Half-Life, Halo, Call of Duty, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, plenty of games. And these games have the more traditional way of refilling supplies. Put the supplies around the map to be picked up. That works really well for true boomer shooters like Doom or Duke 3D, where exploring for supplies and making long-term decisions on what ammo to use is part of the core appeal. In linear shooters, though, it's kinda whatever. It works. Your supplies get refilled in between the action, and the player is held to a limit on how many shots they can miss and how much damage they can take. But that's about it. You see supplies, you take them. That's fine, but Doom 2016, and especially Doom Eternal's system, works a lot better for what it's going for. A more curated experience where ammo is just part of your moveset, and you're being challenged to use that moveset to its fullest. One where you should enter every encounter with everything you need to win. Where you're never truly out of ammo, but always have a reason to conserve it. Where you can frequently be one hit away from death, but always have a way of making a comeback. I like the system enough that I really can't complain too much about imps and soldiers being a little boring, except that I just did for the last 5 hours of this video. And anyway, Doom Eternal makes great use of its heavy demons to make interesting, cool, challenging encounters. It's a big step up from the enemy design of Doom 2016 and often actually feels a little old school. There's this Arachnotron up on this platform at the end of Hell on Earth. The way this whole area is can be really tricky for new players because, like, even if they disarm the Arak, it'll just lob bombs at you while you fight the rest of the enemies on the other side. And the bombs do like 5,000 damage, and just the way this little area is shaped, and with there being a bunch of guys blocking you, it's hard to get away from them. Actually, this could be a good learning moment for new players if they die here, because they might realize they might want to just ignore the imps and stuff and jump across toward the Arachnotron as soon as they disarm it. Speaking of Arachnotrons on perches, there's this one up here on Exultia when you're down in the purple goop. Very devious. Since you have no maneuverability, you're on a timer before this spider kills you, so you learn how important it is to dump damage on a big threat. The introduction to Mancubi feels so old school. Door opens, boom, new enemy. Cut his ass up with these pendulum blades. Then when you kill it, 2 more spawn behind you. Ludo. Too bad it gets ruined for people who have tutorials enabled. Not me. The room with the pillars right after getting the SSG. This tentacle gargoyle party room. The totem room in Super Gore Nest. I take back everything I said about mecha zombies and gargoyles not being threatening. Fighting a Doom Hunter, an enemy that was previously a boss, while BFG 10,000 plays and the BFG 10,000 fires. My god. Archvile is being introduced in probably the biggest arena in the game, so the player barely has time to find it and stop it from summoning. The Taras Nabad Donut Room, Cacodemon Parade, Isabel's Flatteners. This gauntlet of encounters near the end where you ascend multiple floors of this massive building. Each of these timed optional fights are really unique. Almost every encounter in Doom Eternal is memorable somehow. Obviously that has a lot to do with the enemy design being good. Really, Doom Eternal has one of the best cast of enemies I've ever seen, even with the samey fodder enemies. That has a lot to do with staying true to the original Doom cast. Doom 1 and 2's enemy design blows most shooters out of the water to this day, and the returning enemies are mostly the same as they always have been, at least in concept. But I'm really impressed by the newcomers, all of them. Whiplashes are fast and slender, making them hard to hit. Their tracking attack is also impressively threatening. I'm honestly surprised to see something that unforgiving. I don't know why id was so adamant on letting everyone know that she's the first female demon in Doom. I guess that matters a lot to some people. Can't imagine why. Wasn't the spider mastermind a woman? Female? Whatever. What about Olivia? Does she not count? Does she not count as a demon? Probably not. Carcasses fill a mostly neglected niche of support enemies, with their shields obstructing your movement, blocking your attacks, and making rockets more dangerous to use. It's impressive how aggressive they can be with these, as they even follow you in the air and can block your meat-hooking path. Dread Knights are scarier Hell Knights. They're boring to talk about, but they work. Between those and the new fodder, it's really nice to see that a modern id Software isn't just trying to one-up the old boys. The new demons aren't just the tankiest, highest damage enemies around. They run the whole gamut and include some really unique utility aspects. I've seen some criticism that the game railroads players a bit too much, in terms of the strategies that you're forced into during combat. For example, I've seen some people say that when you see a shield guy, your only option is to pull out the plasma rifle. Your only viable option. That's bad, because, to simplify the issue a bit, depth in games comes from having a variety of viable options with a variety of distinct effects, pros and cons. In a single-player game, there's always going to be a dominant strategy, but in a truly deep game, it should be hard to tell which strategy is the dominant one at any point in time. Even if there are a variety of ways to kill the shield guys, if one strategy is way better than all the rest, it might as well be the only option, if you're trying to play optimally. Funnily enough, the go-to example that people use to show that Doom Eternal supposedly fails in this regard is my go-to example for how much these people suck at video games. Because when I see a shield guy, sometimes I use my plasma rifle, but usually I pull out my super shotgun, since the meat hook forces them to drop their shield. It's not very ammo efficient and will put your meat hook on cooldown, but it's even easier and faster than the plasma rifle, and if you have flaming hook, you get armor. Not to mention the precision bolt turns shield guys into an even faster glory kill target than imps or zombie men. If you can aim. If you can't, that's not the game's fault. A rocket is also a faster way to kill shield guys than the plasma rifle. Again, Not great use of ammo, but it mimics the shield overloading effect since it's explosive. Frag grenades are another explosive option that take more real time to detonate, so it's overall slower, but doesn't require your attention after firing, so in terms of the personal time spent, it's technically the fastest way to kill the shield guys. It's also kind of the most ammo efficient, since grenades work on a cooldown. Then again, so does the chainsaw. Shield guys are way more dangerous than imps or zombie men, yet still take only one chainsaw fuel to kill, making them probably the most valuable chainsaw target in the game. That's 6 different ways of dealing with the shield guys that I think are straight up better than plasma rifling, and that's coming from a die-hard plasma rifle fanboy. None of these options are way better than the plasma rifle, but I think they're a little better, and they're certainly not worse. Every option, including plasma, has its own pros and cons, which you just have to think about on the fly when you're dealing with the shield guys. When you're new to the game and you suck, of course you're just going to do the thing the loading screen tip suggests. But once you experiment and improve, just this one enemy offers so many different relevant options of approach, with lots of little things to think about every time. This setup, where your decisions matter, yet you still have multiple viable options, applies to every enemy. Cacodemons are obviously weak to a well-placed sticky bomb, but there are at least 2 combos that are preferable in many situations. Archviles are always your first priority when they're on the field, but exactly how you'll go about reaching them and killing them is a substantial decision. Since the Crucible and BFG are so valuable, they automatically teleport away from another high damage option, lock-on rockets, but even lock rocks are a fine option if you falter them first, which you have several different ways of doing. Doom Hunter's energy shield can only be disabled by the plasma rifle, but you can also just destroy their sled, which is much faster and can be done with any weapon. The only downside is it takes better aim, which isn't actually a downside because aiming is fun. And no matter how much you analyze each enemy's vulnerability to weapons, movesets, and damage types, it's all subject to change due to the game's oppressive ammo pool. Whoops, I'm entirely out of ammo and I'm saving these chainsaws for the cyber mancubus that's about to show up. Guess I'll wait for my frags to recharge to kill this prowler. Great. I actually think the Doom Hunter's energy shield is a good way to filter the kind of scrubs who would complain about enemies not giving you enough viable options. I also wonder if the game's tutorials do the same thing. I wouldn't know, I've never seen them. So yeah, enemy design rules. As I discussed in my Killing Floor 2 review, a well-designed cast of enemies is a big contributor to good gunplay in an FPS. I've already talked about enough things that contribute to Doom Eternal's gunplay that I probably don't even need to go on about this point. The shield guys having such a large variety of options is one example. Your precision bolt shot has to be quite precise to hit them. Your explosives go around their shields. Visuals and sounds are top-notch for creating good game feel, so overloading the energy shields with the plasma rifle is super satisfying. Their shields gradually change color as you damage them, and that can make even a really suboptimal attack on them somehow fun. Enemy weak points, gotta mention those. Disabling enemies' main attacks is important for less skilled players. God gamers are less prone to getting hit, and can kill the enemy before they attack much anyway, but still benefit from sniping weak points due to the falter it causes. Doom Eternal's falter system in general adds a lot to both combat depth and to good game feel. Being able to falter certain enemies at certain times with certain moves adds more to the feeling that you're executing combos in an FPS. Really, you are. Regarding weak points, take a look. For the Mancubus, Arachnotron, and Revenant each, their weak points are at the edges of their models. So there's a bit of risk-reward for aiming for them. You can whiff and just hit nothing. Even something that seems as obvious as knocking off a Mancubus's cannon is a little micro-decision to be made and a maneuver that tests your aim. The aforementioned weakness of fodder is nice because FPS that spam weak enemies at you reward fast aiming. Even if all these imps and zombies aren't really threatening, it still feels good to pop all their heads back to back. Something that Doom and boomer shooters in general have always been good at is providing enemies with a wide variety of health pools. It's good that you can kill like 10 imps with a single sticky bomb, but a Tyrant takes like 500 rockets. The lower health enemies provide context for all the damage you're dishing out against the tankier enemies, and vice versa. That's an often overlooked aspect of good gunplay. The feeling of aiming at things. pew pew, is like 90% of the appeal of the FPS genre. A Doom game, part of a series that was formative for that genre, should definitely meet that appeal. Doom 3 has a lot to like about it, but it completely drops the ball on satisfying the urge to move a mouse to aim at stuff. Like, here's a typical Doom 3 encounter. Shoot the stationary guys 5 feet in front of you. Look at how many shots this takes. The super shotgun, this ain't. Even Doom 2016 isn't as good as Eternal in this regard. Think back to the starting fight I mentioned earlier. Running up to enemies to shotgun and glory kill them, versus tossing bombs at enemies from across the room. Sniping weak points, speedrunning the PB headshot mastery, deleting mancubi from a mile away, lining up a juicy destroyer blade. That's what FPS is about for me. Eternal's gunplay is among the best. I'm not done. All that's just talking about the shooting at base level, as it would compare to, like, boomer shooters. Doom Eternal has a variety of tech, some intentional, some not, that really enhances the physicality of playing the game. You probably already know about fast weapon swapping. Hell, as of one of the updates, Eternal outright tells the player about fast weapon swapping in a loading tip. Of course, weapon swapping management has always been an important part of FPS, the most common motivations being resource management and choosing good movesets. This is still true in Eternal. Obviously, the severely limited ammo pool contributes to that. But the biggest reason for weapon management in Doom Eternal is to cancel reload animations. If you're not familiar with how this works in Eternal, or even in general, here's a demonstration. Without weapon swapping, this is as fast as I can fire the ballista over and over. This particular kind of weapon management has been explored somewhat in other FPS, sort of. Like in Quake, it's common to swap from something like the lightning gun to the railgun if you know your opponent is low enough on health to be killed by a single rail shot. There's a big cooldown between railgun shots, but it's very fast to switch from the lightning gun. But really, I can't think of a shooter that has the emphasis on fast-paced weapon management that Eternal has. Which is a shame, because now that I'm experiencing it, I think FPS is a natural fit for it. This kind of swapping is already embraced by crazy action games, particularly the better Devil May Cry games. What's nice about Doom Eternal is that the game doesn't just come down to always doing the highest damage swap. Limited ammo is one reason why, but really, the moveset of each weapon or weapon combo is still a big factor. For example, combos involving rockets aren't always good since they travel pretty slowly, and most enemies are too mobile for them to reliably hit at long range. Another technique I've recently been enjoying is the Yeet Blast, since I'm such a big plasma rifle fanboy. This is a glitch that allows you to double or sometimes even quadruple the damage you do with the Heat Blast mod. You do this by swapping away from the plasma rifle while firing it, and activating the Heat Blast immediately after swapping, while continuing to hold fire. It's not really that complicated in terms of inputs, but the fact that the Heat Blast is something you need to charge to begin with, and that you need to be firing the plasma rifle as you're swapping, surprisingly adds a lot of depth to getting the most out of this technique. Advanced meat hooking, bunny hopping, quick locking. There's a decent amount of tech in Doom Eternal which all stacks on top of everything I've been talking about. Doom Eternal is like a dream FPS for someone like me, since I heavily value high skill cap controls and complex inputs in games. Something that fans of crazy games love is how cool the games make you feel when you play them well. The theme of most of these games is style, and the Devil May Cry games even have a literal style meter that feeds into their scoring system. Seeing the characters be cocky and flashy in cutscenes is one thing, but peak Ludo is when you can live up to it during gameplay. Playing Doom Eternal well is one of the most stylish things in video games. In FPS, I've never seen anything like it. Titanfall, I guess. 3D action games have an advantage when it comes to stylish, skillful play. Character model animations. Things like microspacing, attack choice, or enemy prioritization serve as a form of expression in these games. They're all given context by full-body animation. Charged hits from Virgil's Beowulf are an easy example. Nero's Buster arm moves are another. But FPS games have an advantage of their own, one often overlooked. Aim. It's amazing to me how expressive a skilled player can be with how they look around in an FPS.
It's another rail. In now, Geovic needs to be careful on the chase and the rockets won't land.
That's one reason why I'm confident in saying that Doom Eternal deserves to be considered a crazy action game along with the rest. It sounds weird because it's a shooter, but I think shooters have always had this potential. Here's what's stylish about Doom Eternal. Meat hooking is cool. Meat hooking is Eternal's main movement thing. Quake and stuff have their things. Usually they require a bit of momentum buildup, which is cool. Meat hooking doesn't require that. You just meat hook and you're flying. It doesn't take as much investment or skill to execute, but it means you can do it like all the time. And you should. It makes you way less likely to get hit. So the potential for style is off the charts just because of meat hooking. Because shooting stuff precisely from weird angles and while moving fast is really cool. It's like the best parts of old frag videos except constantly. Speaking of quickscoping with the PB, cool. Getting headshots with the PB. Headshots were in 2016 as well, but in Eternal they do this cartoony pop sound so you have better feedback that you got him. Good gunplay, good game feel, looks cool. Weapon swapping a lot is stylish. High APM gameplay in games is stylish in general because doing things fast with your hands is stylish. Weapon swapping itself isn't inherently interesting, just like spamming a single command in StarCraft isn't interesting. I've seen some people play Eternal swapping weapons constantly in ways that make no sense, like they saw videos of skilled players swapping weapons a lot and decided to do it without understanding why. I'm not trying to mock them, I'm just saying. What is cool is weapon swapping with purpose. Taking down Mancubi with PB rocket swaps is always impressive, and there is a reason to do that. Related to that, combos are stylish. PB rocket is spamming a lot of damage fast, but some combos are more precise, like it's very satisfying to take out a carcass with a single PB and a single ballista. My favorite combo is PB ballista SSG on whiplashes, because they're skinny and fast and hard to hit with the first two of those, but it still works well, kills them fast, and spreads out use of all three ammo types. Usually, if you're not at point-blank range, the SSG shot will make them glory killable with this combo, and I like that because the behind-the-back GK on whiplashes is my favorite one in the game. Speaking of GKs, it's obvious how that's stylish. Like I said, paired animations aren't exactly gameplay, but a creative player can make them stylish within the context of their play, like how DMC chads do with taunts. Like I said, timing your GKs to iframe through incoming damage is sick, for example. But while taunting in crazy games is a big balls move that can be helpful if you're good enough to pull it off, glory kills are pretty low skill, usually. But players know that. That's the established context of glory kills. So you know what's really stylish? Not glory killing. Remember when I said that I hate the argument that you can just ignore glory kills? Well, you actually can just ignore glory kills, and it looks cool. It's the player giving the middle finger to the game like, I don't need health, I don't need iframes, blasting this demon with the SSG is faster, so bye. On that note, good resource management is stylish, as nerdy as that sounds. Oh no, don't be a nerd! In this hour-long video game review. For example, good flame belching is cool because of how loud picking up armor is. You know this animation? When you get a new rune, like, "Whoa, the power is flowing into me, ah!" Blowing up a group of fodder you just set on fire and collecting like 80 armor at once is like that to me. The sound design and visuals of armor shards flying into you is anything but immersive. But it serves the gameplay well, and it feels more genuine than this rune animation because it's pure gameplay. My testosterone spikes in real life every time I do this. Enough examples. You get it. Just playing the game the way you're supposed to looks cool. You know, playing optimally. Players can take things even further because aiming in an FPS is so freeform, and because there are so many enemies that you can play this game super fast. Or you can play it slow. I could list all the various techniques to learn in this game, all the various ways that you could theoretically look flashy, but ultimately it's up to you to take the techniques of this game and just general skill of this game and put it all together in a way that's all you. There's way more room for expression in this game than you would expect from such a linear game, and that creativity is highly comparable to crazy action games.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Hell, Doom Eternal isn't just comparable to crazy action games, it is one. If there's one point I want to make in this video, that's it. Welcome to the future of gaming, nerds. Some people call these games character action games, and I hate that. But that's because these games always have iconic player characters whose personalities play along with the core themes, which all feed into the game's style. I don't think games of this subgenre need that, which is why I don't like the term, but that's how they usually are, and I think it's cool. Doom Guy is now one of those characters. He's this game's Dante, Bayonetta, Wonder Red. Am I taking this too far? Am I really making a whole point out of this video game has a player character? Sorry. Anyway, Doom Guy. Originally, Doom Guy was just that. Not a legend, or a force of nature, not a demon or a god. He was just a Marine, more badass than average, and according to his backstory about assaulting a superior officer, more morally upright than average. So he's perfect hero material. But he wasn't a superhero. He was John McClane, not Superman. The super shotgun was just a gun Doom Guy found lying around. If you do pistol starts only in Doom 2, you don't even have it a lot of the time. Now it's a relic from your past. Doom Guy punched demons as a last resort, or to save a little ammo, not because his arm emits magical energy. Just like with the gameplay, it's okay if story things change. As the cultural perception of Doom Guy has shifted, Doom and its portrayal of him has reacted. Taken literally, the things Doom Guy accomplishes in the original games are superhuman, and in pop culture, he's been revered as such. He's the man who's too angry to die, the human the demons are stuck in hell with. He is the traumatic event. Doom is legendary. Cameos in other games, ports to every device known to man, old 4chan posts calculating the exact speed Doom Guy can run at. 57 miles per hour, by the way. New WADs being made all the time, meaning to this day there's still new Doom content coming out. Even without any new official games, Doom would be eternal. So Doom Eternal is all about that legacy. Doom Guy has actual supernatural power now. Super strength, speed, and I guess immortality? I don't know. This dude powered him up. Kevin Cloud's hairy arms came to represent a hilarious sort of badassery involved in trying to punch a demonic creature from hell. Now, your punch literally embodies that role. The big fucking gun became legendary as a screen-clearing weapon, and it should be obvious how it's celebrated in Eternal. The super shotgun is so much fun to use that it's become iconic. It always makes an appearance in any discussion about top video game shotguns, and even if there are others you like more, they're standing on the SSG's shoulders. And so, it's no longer just a double-barreled shotgun, it's the FPS equivalent of Excalibur. Truly a weapon worthy of the meat hook, which gives the game some of the most fun mobility of anything I've played. You've got all these toys and music from various id Soft games as collectibles, and even some of the demons who looked different in 2016 now have their classic look. And yes, Doom can run Doom. Thematically, this Doom is intentionally more in line with, and referential to, the fan perception of what Doom is like, because Doom Eternal is a fan game itself. Hugo Martin didn't work on Doom 1 or 2 or 64. He's a fan. You get the idea. It's a celebration, bitches. That's the theme of the game. The original setup of just a soldier fighting for survival makes more sense for a character with a more minimal kit. You're a guy with a gun, simple as. A game with such crazy abilities as like meat hooking, dashing, blood punching, I think that would clash a little bit with the original's tone, so I think the change works. In the classic games, Doom Guy is fighting to survive against certain doom. In the modern games, like Dr. Richardson says,
he is Doom.
2016 did a masterful job with this. Waking up on an altar is already enough. What I really like is the weapon animations. Doom Guy's movements are so, mundane and straightforward. But they're this weird combination of quick and slow at the same time. There's these pauses in a lot of his movements. You know when you're really pissed off about something, but you're a mega chad, so instead of expressing your anger, you just hold it in and get really focused on whatever you're doing? It's like Doom Guy focusing his rage into messing around with these little weapon attachments. These animations are masterpieces of very subtle characterization. Eternal's story and its portrayal of Doom Guy are less grounded than even 2016's. Doom Guy's gone from swapping little attachments to just slapping half the gun on and off. This time the tone is expressed just as much by the weapons as Doom Guy himself. The rocket launcher and ballista are less sci-fi military and more like artifacts plundered from hell itself. The ballista is literally a giant chain crossbow that fires screaming hell energy blades. Firing the rocket launcher sounds like the inside of a factory. The combat shotgun sounds nice and chunky. My favorite sci-fi gun design of all time is back, and while nothing will ever compare to its firing sound in the original game, this is a step up in impact over 2016's firing sounds. Comparing the SSG to its 2016 counterpart is the best example, I think. From grounded and believable shotgun fire to a deep, bassy blast. This is what Doom sounds like. Doom also sounds like heavy metal. Doom 2016 leaned much more heavily towards synths than electric guitars, and that's okay, because classic Doom soundtracks were pretty varied anyway. Despite popular perception, Doom 1 and 2 were not just non-stop brutal death metal in MIDI form. But metal in MIDI form is a good chunk of them. "2016's composer, Mick Gordon, has talked about the challenge of getting any metal in the game at all.
So the game itself there felt like Doom, but it wasn't sounding like Doom, and I knew exactly why. We had no guitars. That harsh, aggressive, upfront sound that you get from a guitar is exactly appropriate, and it was the thing that was missing from the soundtrack. Now, it took some convincing, but after a while we started looking at, hey, what happens if we add a little bit of guitar, like 5% here?
God bless his efforts, because the metal tracks that did make it into 2016 have become iconic parts of the series. Eternal benefits from that game's success. It lets the metal go even harder. I'm actually really surprised to hear a AAA game with some of the tracks that we hear in Doom Eternal. Super Gore-Nest's battle theme sounds like the name of the level it's from. High energy and fun, yet sinister and dirty. Cultist Base's battle theme is a really interesting one. The opening riff fits the vibe of Doomguy's brutal yet focused effort to stop the invasion. Those little bits of silence in contrast with how heavy it is, so good. Then the synths kick in. Listen, at first they start really low, then the second one is like way higher than you'd expect. The way they continue rising in pitch is amazing. It, gives the impression of something going out of control, like you're really overwhelming the demons with your abilities. Even some of the non-metal tracks maintain the heavy metal feeling of the story. The theme of the game's most Saturday morning cartoon villain, De Grenache, is one of my favorites. The sound effects and the music both play a huge role in the game's tone. From the music, to the game's brighter and higher contrast colors, to the Iron Maiden-esque look of some of the demons, to the loads of gore, Doom Eternal manages to capture some of the feeling of the originals. Just like 2016, Eternal does a fantastic job of showing us its new, fan-fiction-esque take on Doomguy. These scenes of him busting the Argent Energy thingies in 2016 are great. Interestingly, all of 2016's cutscenes are in first person and don't cut away from the gameplay, which is nice thematic consistency. Eternal has more traditional cutscenes, many of them being third person. That lets us get a look at Doomguy's abs, and lets id characterize him using a larger variety of body language. In both games, we're shown a man with a one-track mind. Doomguy isn't taking joy in anything but ripping and tearing, and finding new stuff to help him do it. Some things never change. He's the kind of guy to ignore any formalities and take the most direct way to getting things done, like with Doomguy firing himself out of a giant cannon just to get somewhere faster, and what's probably the most iconic story beat of Eternal.
You can't just shoot a hole into the surface of Mars.
I like these times when Doomguy just walks away from someone while they're trying to be all melodramatic to him. Anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. I'll see you later. Doomguy is mad at demons, and as an embodiment of justified anger, he's the perfect protagonist for such a heavy metal FPS game. The greatest part is that this vibe that Doomguy and the game in general gives off is perfect for a tough shooter. When you suck at the game and get owned, the very theme of the game, of being pissed off at the demons who killed you, can be very fitting. It can also be very motivating, that focused rage, when you keep at it and get better, to the point that you can make a joke out of the game's hardest challenges. Doomguy's vibe still fits. He's the demon's worst nightmare, and so is a good Doom Eternal player. That's what the Marauder is all about. To almost every new player, he'll stand out as a big roadblock. He's polarizing, with even many people who praise this game more vehemently than me whining about Marauders. When the game was new, people said he clashed with the core gameplay, that he forced you to play in a different way than you were used to. They're not wrong, other than having bad taste. His presence does demand the player respect him, and new players will have to change their playstyle to handle him. He reminds me of many NES boss fights, in terms of how he is largely about making him react to your own positioning and actions. I personally like that. Regardless, the conversation has shifted since release. As people have improved at the game, people have found ways to kill the Marauder faster and faster, sometimes in ways that make him look like any other enemy. Now, for some players, the focus isn't on how to kill him as reliably or as fast as possible, but how to kill him as creatively as possible. I feel like this is exactly how things were meant to go. This dude was designed specifically to have this cultural impact, and to be emblematic of people's ability to absolutely style on a game once they learn it. I refuse to believe otherwise. This was planned. The Marauder has gone from being the most feared enemy in Eternal to the most humiliated. When Doom came out, nobody was a great FPS player, except maybe John Romero. 27 years of fragging later, and flicking a mouse is second nature to a lot of us. And so Doom Guy's potential power has grown to match. He and the previous titles have become venerated in the game just as in real life. Eternal really goes out of its way to show reverence. Maybe it would be appropriate to honor past Dooms with a game that's a true boomer shooter, with more open level design and less complex but still deep shooting. But I think it's equally appropriate to do it with a game that raises the bar of some aspects of single-player FPS games. Doom games have always been cutting edge in some way, with stuff like its constant resource management, lots of different relevant weapons and mods, and high APM gameplay. Doom Eternal shows the potential for additional complexity and depth in single-player FPS. All that comes together to make one of the fastest, most technical, and most stylish games ever made, and one of the few FPS in which the party truly does get crazy. That's it, I'm done. Oh yeah, it's soft. Hunter and Quake champions win.